This is Poetry Lesson 2, Part 1. In this lesson, we'll take a look at the elements of poetic style. Today's question to consider is, what kind of poetry do I like? Well, the kind of poetry that you like will depend on your preference of poetic style. Now, I know what you're thinking. Having to learn literary terms like poetic style in school is exactly why you don't like poetry. Am I right? I get it. But it really isn't as difficult as all that. You think about your style preferences every time you think about watching a movie. Do you like comedies or dramas? Do you like documentaries or fictional feature films? Do you like action movies, sci-fi, romance, classics? Which actors do you love to see on the big screen? For me, it's Denzel Washington. He's my #1 favorite actor of all time. The point is, you are already analyzing movies in the same way we analyze literature. How the movie is made is called form, and what is written in the script and how the actors interpret the script is called content. What you think about the movie is your interpretation of its meaning. We can think about poetry in the very same way. Poetic style is expressed in its simplest terms by an equation: form plus content equals meaning. Let's go a little deeper. Poetic form can be categorized into two main groups. The first is lines and stanzas. Lines is exactly what it sounds like. Are the lines of the poem long or short? How many lines are there? And the term stanza is how to refer to a grouping of lines. Is the poem one long stanza, or is it broken into several short stanzas? The second category that makes up poetic form is rhythm and rhyme. You already know that words are made up of syllables. The word litigate has 3 syllables. Litigate. It means to use a legal process. The stressed syllable in the word litigate is the first syllable, as this little apostrophe shows us. Litigate. The word contract has 2 syllables, and its stress is on the first syllable too. You might litigate an agreement by having 2 people sign a contract. How we stress syllables makes a difference. If I say contract, I'm talking about a legally binding agreement. But if I say contract, I'm talking about squeezing something to make it smaller. Very different. Poets use stressed and unstressed syllables to their advantage. They can put words together to create sound patterns and then heighten that rhythm with rhyming words at the end of lines or internally in the middle of the lines. Let's take a look at a few examples of form in poetry. This kind of poetry form has a name. It's called concrete poetry because it has a physical, tangible element to it. The words of the poem on the left, called Martin Luther King Jr., created by the students of Roanoke Elementary School, create the shape of Martin Luther King's silhouette. The poem on the right, called To Touch by Miriam Sagan, takes up an entire room, and Sagan invites people reading the poem to move words around so that the poem is always changing. Invitation by Shel Silverstein is a more traditional form of poetry. You can read it in a book, and the first word of each line is capitalized, a huge indicator that you're reading poetry. Notice how some of the lines are long and some are very short. This poem, What the Cicada Said to the Brown Boy by Clint Smith, is also written in poetic lines, but notice how this poet chose to use no capital letters at the beginning of his lines. We can still recognize this as poetry, though, because of its form. It has short lines that are grouped into stanzas. This poem has 8 stanzas. Spoken word poetry is probably the most modern form of poetry. It isn't meant to be read at all. It's meant to be personally performed by the poet. Rap is another version of spoken word poetry. Listen to this poem by Marshall Davis Jones called Touchscreen. Pay special attention to his form, the way he uses lines, rhythm, and rhyme.
Introducing the new Apple iPerson, complete with multi-touch and volume control. Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? My world is so digital that I have forgotten what that feels like. It used to be hard to connect when friends formed cliques, but it's even more difficult to connect now that cliques form friends. But who am I to judge? I face Facebook more than books face me, hoping to book face-to-faces. I update my status, 420 space to prove I'm still breathing. Failure to do this daily means my whole web-wide world will forget that I exist. But with 3,000 friends online, only 5 I can count in real life. Why wouldn't I spend more time in the world where there are more people that like me? Wouldn't you? Here, it doesn't matter if I'm an amateur person as long as I have a profile. My smile is 50% genuine and 50% genuine HD. You would need Blu-rays to read the whites of my teeth, but I'm not that focused. 10 tabs open, hoping my problems can be resolved, but a 1600 by 1700 revolution. This is a problem with this evolution doubled over. We used to sit in treetops till we swung down to stand upright and someone slipped a disc. Now we're doubled over at desktops. From the Garden of Eden to the branches of Macintosh, apple picking has always come at a great cost. iPod, iMac, iPhone, iChat. I can do all of these things without making eye contact. We used to sprint. We used to sprint to pick and store blackberries. Now we run to the Sprint store to pick blackberries. It's scary. I can't hear the sound of Mother Nature speaking over all that tweeting. And along with it is our ability to feel as it's fleeting. You would think these headphone jacks inject in the flesh the way we connect the disconnect power on. So we are powerless. They got us love drugged like e-pills. So we e-trade, email, emotion like e-commerce because now money can buy love for $9.95 a month. Click to proceed to checkout. Click to X out where our hearts once were. Click. I've uploaded this hug. I hope she gets it. Click. I'm making love to my wife. I hope she's logged in. Click. I'm holding my daughter over a Skype conference call while she's crying in the crib in the next room. Click. So when my phone goes off on my hip, I touch and I touch and I touch because in a world where there are voices that are only read and laughter is never heard, I'm so desperate to feel that I hope the technology can reverse the universe until the screen can touch me back. And maybe it will when our technology is advanced enough to make us human again.
Look at our style equation again. Form plus content equals meaning. We know about form. Let's take a look at content. Content can be sorted into 3 categories: topic and tone, diction and syntax, and imagery and figurative language. Most of these elements are not new to you. Diction and syntax might be new words for you. Diction means word choice, like a dictionary. And syntax is how we describe the way a poet chooses the order of the words in a line or the order of the lines in a poem. You've probably heard words like theme, simile, metaphor before. We'll talk more about tone, imagery, and figurative language as we go. So, poetic style is composed of form plus content, and when you put those 2 concepts together, you can find meaning in the poetry. I can't give you a definition of what the meaning of poetry is because it's different for everybody. Remember, literature is art, and art is subjective. It's up to you. When you're trying to decide on the literary merit of a particular poem, it really depends on your own personality, your own life experiences. So ask yourself, what kind of poetry do I like?